When Marcus got into that car, he saw a letter in the driver's bag with his own name on it, but the letter was from his brother who had disappeared 10 years ago. Marcus Chen stood at the entrance to a truck stop outside Amarillo, Texas, watching the late morning sun beat down on the endless stretch of asphalt and prairie grass. He'd been waiting for a ride for 2 hours, and the October heat was starting to make him reconsider his decision to hitchhike through the Texas Panhandle. His water was running low, and the next major city was still 100 miles away. Marcus adjusted his backpack and was about to head inside the truck stop for some shade when he heard the sound of a car door slamming. But Marcus had no idea that this ride would bring him face to face with a mystery from his family's past that had haunted him for a decade. A middle-aged man in a worn leather jacket was walking toward him from a dusty pickup truck. He had graying hair and the kind of weathered face that suggested he'd spent most of his life working outdoors. "You need a ride, son?" the man called out. "Definitely," Marcus replied, jogging toward the truck. "I'm heading east, anywhere in that direction. I'm going to Oklahoma City. That work for you?" "Perfect. I'm Marcus, by the way. Name's Ray. Ray Sullivan." Marcus climbed into the passenger seat of the old Ford pickup, grateful for any relief from the Texas heat. The truck was clean but well used, with the kind of honest wear that came from years of hard work rather than neglect. As they pulled back onto Interstate 40, Ray seemed like exactly the kind of person who made hitchhiking worthwhile. A working man with stories to tell, and a genuine interest in helping a stranger get where he needed to go. "What brings you through Texas?" Ray asked as they merged into traffic. "Just traveling. Seeing the country, meeting people, collecting stories." Ray nodded approvingly. "Good way to spend your youth. I did some traveling myself when I was your age before I settled down." As they drove through the endless Texas landscape, Ray shared stories about his work as a construction contractor, his travels across the Southwest, and his family back in Oklahoma. The conversation flowed naturally, and Marcus found himself relaxing for the first time in hours. But when Ray reached for something in his bag on the floor, Marcus noticed something that made his heart skip a beat. There was an envelope in Ray's bag, partially visible among tools and paperwork. The envelope was yellowed with age, and on the front, in handwriting that Marcus recognized, was his own name, Marcus Chen. Marcus stared at the envelope, trying to process what he was seeing. The handwriting was definitely familiar, but he couldn't quite place it. "Ray," Marcus said carefully, "I couldn't help but notice there's an envelope in your bag with my name on it." Ray glanced down at his bag, then back at Marcus with a puzzled expression. "That's strange. I don't remember putting anything like that in there." He pulled over to the side of the highway and reached into his bag, pulling out the envelope. As he handed it to Marcus, both men could see that it was old. The paper was discolored, and the edges were worn. "Marcus Chen," Ray read aloud.
"That's definitely your name."
"But I have no idea how this got in my truck." Marcus took the envelope with trembling hands. The handwriting on the front was suddenly devastatingly familiar. It was his brother Danny's handwriting. But Danny had disappeared 10 years ago when Marcus was 13 and Danny was 18. He'd left for college one day and simply never come back. No phone calls, no letters, no trace of where he'd gone or what had happened to him. Marcus's family had spent years searching, hiring private investigators, posting missing person reports, but Danny Chen had vanished as completely as if he'd never existed. And now Marcus was holding an envelope addressed to him in Danny's unmistakable handwriting. "Marcus, you look like you've seen a ghost," Ray said with concern. "Do you recognize the handwriting?" "It's from my brother," Marcus whispered. "But he's been missing for 10 years. But the mystery was about to get even deeper. Marcus opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper, also yellowed with age, covered in Danny's familiar scrawl. "Marcus, if you're reading this, then something has happened to me, and I need you to know the truth. I didn't disappear by choice. I was taken by people who wanted something our family has, something we didn't even know we had. I've been trying to get back to you for years, but every time I get close, they find me again. I'm leaving this with someone I trust, someone who travels the roads like you do. If fate brings you together, maybe you'll finally learn what really happened to me. Look for the truth in the place where our grandfather used to take us fishing. The key is hidden where we carved our initials. Be careful who you trust. They might still be watching our family. I never stopped trying to come home. Danny. Marcus read the letter 3 times, each time hoping the words would change, would make more sense, would provide clearer answers instead of raising more questions. Ray, Marcus said finally, how long have you had this letter? Ray scratched his head, looking genuinely confused. That's the thing. I've never seen it before today. I clean out my truck regularly, and I'm sure that envelope wasn't there this morning. Then, how did it get there? I honestly don't know. I stopped for gas about an hour before I picked you up. Maybe someone put it there then? But Marcus was starting to suspect that Ray's involvement wasn't as innocent as it appeared. Ray, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Have you ever heard the name Danny Chen before today? Ray was quiet for a long moment, his hands gripping the steering wheel as he stared at the road ahead. Marcus, there's something I need to tell you. But first, I want you to know that I never meant any harm to you or your family. Marcus felt his stomach drop. What do you mean? About 5 years ago, I was contacted by a man who said he was looking for information about a missing person named Daniel Chen. He said Daniel's family was still searching for him, and he was trying to help them find closure. Ray pulled out his phone and showed Marcus a photo. It was Danny, looking older than Marcus remembered him, but definitely his brother. The man said Daniel had been living under a different name, working construction jobs across the Southwest. He said Daniel wanted to reach out to his family but was afraid of something, afraid of people who might hurt his family if they knew where he was. Marcus stared at the photo, seeing his brother's face for the first time in a decade. Danny looked tired, older, but alive. Where was this photo taken? According to the man who contacted me, it was taken at a construction site in New Mexico about 3 years ago. But Ray's story was about to take an even more disturbing turn. Marcus. The man who contacted me said he was a private investigator hired by your family. He asked me to keep an eye out for anyone named Chen who might be hitchhiking through Texas. Said your brother had mentioned you liked to travel. What was this investigator's name? James Morrison. He said he had been working your brother's case for years. Marcus felt a chill. His family had hired several private investigators over the years, but he'd never heard of anyone named James Morrison. Ray, did this Morrison give you the letter? No, that's what's so strange. He just asked me to watch for you and report back if I ever encountered you. I never heard anything about a letter. Marcus realized he was dealing with something much more complex than a simple missing person case. Someone had been watching his family, tracking their movements, possibly for years. Ray, I need you to call this Morrison right now. I want to talk to him. Ray dialed the number, but after several rings, an automated message informed them that the number was no longer in service. That's impossible, Ray said. I talked to him just 6 months ago. But Marcus was starting to understand that nothing about this situation was what it seemed. Ray, think carefully. In all your conversations with Morrison, did he ever ask you to do anything besides watch for me? Did he ever want information about my family, our address, our routines? Ray's face grew pale as he considered the question. Now that you mention it, he did ask a lot of specific questions. Where your parents lived, what kind of car they drove, your sister's school schedule. My sister's school schedule? Why would a legitimate private investigator need that information? He said it was to make sure he didn't accidentally approach family members at inconvenient times, that he wanted to be respectful of your privacy. Marcus realized that Morrison hadn't been trying to help find Danny. He'd been gathering intelligence about Marcus's family for some unknown purpose. Ray, I think you've been manipulated by someone who's been stalking my family for years. They sat in the truck on the side of the Texas highway, both trying to process the implications of what they'd discovered. But the letter itself contained information that would change everything. Marcus thought he knew about his brother's disappearance. Danny's letter mentions something about our grandfather taking us fishing. There's only one place that could be. A lake in Northern California where we used to go every summer. Marcus pulled out his phone and called his parents in San Diego. Mom, it's Marcus. I need to ask you something about Danny. Did he ever mention being afraid of someone? Did he ever say anything about people wanting something our family had? His mother's voice grew quiet. Marcus, where are you? Why are you asking about Danny? I'm in Texas, and I just received a letter from him. Mom, he says he was taken by people who wanted something from our family. What could that mean? Oh my God, his mother whispered. Marcus, your grandfather never told us. But after Danny disappeared, we found some documents in his belongings. Old papers from when he came to America from China. What kind of documents? We never understood them completely, but they seemed to involve some kind of inheritance. Some property or assets that were supposed to be passed down through the family. Marcus felt pieces of a puzzle beginning to come together. Mom, someone has been watching our family for years. A man claiming to be a private investigator has been gathering information about us. But his mother's next revelation would explain everything. Marcus, about 2 years after Danny disappeared, a man contacted us claiming to be a lawyer representing some distant relatives in China. He said there was property that rightfully belonged to our family, but he needed documentation to prove our relationship to the original owners. Did you give him any information? We were desperate for any lead about Danny. We thought maybe if we helped with this property issue it might somehow lead us to him. Marcus realized that his family had been targeted for years by people who believed they had access to valuable property or assets in China. Mom, what happened with this lawyer? He disappeared as soon as we told him we didn't have any documentation. But Marcus, strange things started happening after that. Our mail was tampered with. We saw the same car parked outside our house multiple times. And your sister noticed someone following her home from school. The scope of what his family had been dealing with was staggering. Danny's disappearance hadn't been random. It had been orchestrated by people who believed the Chen family had something valuable. Marcus said after hanging up. I need to get to that lake in California. There's something there that might explain what happened to Danny. I'll drive you, Ray said without hesitation. Ray, this could be dangerous. If these people have been watching my family for years, they might be watching that lake too. Your brother trusted me enough to have that letter end up in my truck somehow. I'm not going to abandon you now. But their journey to California would reveal that they weren't the only ones looking for whatever Danny had hidden at the lake. As they drove west through New Mexico and Arizona, Marcus called his sister Emma to warn her about the potential danger their family was in. Emma, I need you to be extra careful for the next few days. Don't go anywhere alone, and if you see anyone following you or notice anything unusual, call the police immediately. Marcus, you're scaring me. What's going on? Marcus explained about the letter, about Morrison, about the people who had been watching their family. But Marcus, there's something else. Last week someone broke into Grandpa's old house. The one our parents have been trying to sell. Nothing was stolen. But it looked like someone had been searching for something. The break-in confirmed Marcus's suspicion that the people who had taken Danny were still actively searching for whatever they believed the Chen family possessed. Emma, tell Mom and Dad to go stay with Aunt Linda for a few days. Don't go back to the house until I figure out what's going on. 2 days later, Marcus and Ray arrived at the lake in Northern California, where Marcus and Danny had spent countless summer afternoons with their grandfather. But as they parked near the old fishing spot, Marcus noticed something that made his heart race. Fresh tire tracks in the dirt. Footprints around the area where he and Danny had carved their initials in an old oak tree, and evidence that someone had been digging near the tree's base. Ray, someone else has been here recently. Someone else knows about this place. They approached the oak tree carefully, and Marcus found the initials he and Danny had carved 15 years earlier. MC. But beneath the carved initials someone had recently dug a small hole. The hole was empty, but Marcus could see that something had been buried there and recently removed. "We're too late," Marcus said. "Whatever Danny hid here, someone else found it." But Ray noticed something the other searchers had missed. "Marcus, look at this." Ray was examining the bark of the oak tree more carefully. "There's another set of initials here, carved much more recently." Higher up on the trunk, almost hidden by the tree's natural growth, were freshly carved letters. D. Danny was here 4 years ago, Marcus realized. And he left another clue. They searched the area for any bridge, and about a quarter-mile from the oak tree they found an old wooden footbridge that crossed a small stream feeding into the lake. Underneath the bridge, wrapped in plastic and duct-taped to one of the support beams, was a waterproof container. Inside the container were documents that would finally explain everything. The papers included property deeds, bank account information, and legal documents dating back to the 1940s. Marcus's grandfather had indeed inherited valuable property in China. Property that had become extremely valuable as China's economy grew. But more importantly, there were recent documents showing that Danny had been working with legitimate lawyers to reclaim the family's inheritance and donate most of it to organizations that helped families of missing persons. There was also a more recent letter from Danny. "Marcus, if you found this, it means the people who took me are still looking for our family's inheritance. I've been working to legally transfer everything to charitable organizations, so these people can't profit from Grandpa's legacy. But they don't know I've already done this. The inheritance is protected now, but they might still come after our family thinking we have access to the money. I'm working with real lawyers and real investigators to expose the people who kidnapped me. Don't trust anyone claiming to work on missing person cases unless Mom and Dad can verify their credentials through official channels. I'm alive, I'm safe, and I'm coming home soon. I love you all, Danny." The letter was dated only 6 months earlier. Marcus called his parents immediately with the news that Danny was alive and had been working to protect their family. But the most amazing development came 3 days later. Marcus was back home in San Diego, reuniting with his family and sharing Danny's letters with the legitimate FBI agents who were now investigating the criminal organization that had been targeting Chinese-American families with inheritance claims. That's when the phone rang. "Is this Marcus Chen?" The voice was older, more mature, but unmistakably familiar. "Danny? Hey, little brother, I heard you've been looking for me." The reunion that followed was everything Marcus's family had dreamed of for 10 years. Danny was alive, safe, and finally free to come home. He'd spent a decade working with federal authorities to expose an international criminal organization that targeted immigrant families with inheritance scams. The group would research families' backgrounds, identify potential inheritances, then kidnap family members to force cooperation. "They took me because they thought I could help them access Grandpa's property," Danny explained. "But when I proved that I didn't have any documentation, they realized they'd made a mistake. Instead of releasing me, they decided to use me as leverage against our family." Danny had spent years in protective custody, working undercover to help authorities identify and arrest the criminal network. "Every time I tried to contact you directly, it risked exposing the investigation and putting our family in danger. So I had to find creative ways to let you know I was alive." The letter in Ray's truck. "How did you arrange that?" Danny smiled. "Ray has been helping the FBI for years, identifying suspicious people on the highways who might be connected to trafficking operations. When I heard through my contacts that you were hitchhiking through Texas, I asked the Bureau to have Ray watch for you." "So Ray knew who I was the whole time?" "He knew he was supposed to help you if you needed it. But the letter was my idea. My way of making sure you'd learn the truth if something happened to me before the investigation was complete." But Danny had one more surprise. "Marcus, the people who targeted our family have been arrested. The investigation is complete, and the inheritance money is going to help other families who've been victimized by similar scams. What about you? What happens now?" "Now I get to go back to being your annoying older brother instead of a federal witness." The dusty pickup truck that had seemed like just another ride across Texas had actually been part of an elaborate plan to reconnect a family that had been torn apart by criminal predators. Ray Sullivan wasn't just a helpful contractor. He was part of a network of people who watched America's highways for signs of trafficking and exploitation. Marcus learned that his love of hitchhiking had actually put him in contact with a hidden community of people who protected travelers and helped law enforcement identify dangerous situations. The open road isn't just about freedom and adventure, Ray explained later. For some of us, it's about making sure other people can travel safely. Danny's disappearance had led to an investigation that protected dozens of other families and shut down an international criminal network. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the best thing you can do for others, Danny reflected. Marcus continued hitchhiking, but now with a deeper understanding of the hidden networks of protection and danger that existed along America's highways. He also continued carrying Danny's original letter, not the one Ray had given him, but a new one Danny wrote for him to carry on his travels. It simply said, "For Marcus, the road always leads home eventually, Danny." Sometimes the most important message you'll ever receive comes from the person you thought you'd lost forever. And sometimes the most random encounter is actually the result of years of careful planning by people who care more about your safety than you'll ever know. The mystery of the letter with his own name on it had led Marcus back to his brother, back to his family, and back to the understanding that even in a world full of predators and criminals, there are always people working quietly to protect others. Ray Sullivan continued driving the highways of Texas, still watching for travelers who might need help, still carrying messages between people who needed to find each other. And Danny Chen returned to the life he'd left behind 10 years earlier, forever grateful for the network of protectors who had helped him survive and eventually expose the people who had tried to destroy his family. Sometimes the most important journey isn't about reaching a destination. It's about finding the people who've been looking for you all along.